everyone, and welcome to the Koala Club podcast, a podcast made by and for international students in Australia. I am Kevin.
And I am Trang, and we talk about everything education, work, and lifestyle for overseas students in Australia.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the episode 14 of the Koala Club podcast. Hey, how are you, Trang?
I'm good, thank you, Kevin. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Welcome back to this week. We have a lot of new students coming this week, right, to different unis. For those students, before they come to Australia to study, there were a lot of people asking the same question as in when is the best time for international students to come to Australia? Is it in high school, year 10, year 11, year 12, or should they come after high school as in starting in uni? So I think this is very interesting questions and topic to talk about.
So, Kevin, why don't you kick us off and share with us what's the secondary education or high school system here in Australia like?
Okay, so here in Australia, the high school and secondary education system is quite different from a lot of other countries, especially from Asian background countries. So in here, there are two kind of levels. First one is called secondary education, which is normally from year 7 to year 10, or in some states would be year 8 to year 10. That's a secondary education. And then after you finish year 10, you will have 2 years of what they call senior secondary educations, which is from year 11 to year 12. And then after year 12 completions, students will get a senior secondary education certificate. You can use this certificate and the test result for your university entrance, and university education is what they call tertiary educations.
Yes, so it's interesting because I think each state has a different name for the this high school certificate, right? Because we live in New South Wales, all I've heard of is the HSC or higher school certificate, but I think other states they call it a little bit of different name as well.
Yes, in each state you will have different name for this called what they call year 12 certificate. So for example, we live in New South Wales, and in New South Wales it is called higher school certificate, or the abbreviation is HSC for short. In Tasmania, for example, it's called Tasmanian Certificate of Education, or Queen's Victoria will be Victorian Certificate of Education. So there's a table, and we will link the website with the more details for you in the show notes.
Mm. Yeah, so but basically it doesn't really matter which state you do your high school in, you can still go to any other states for uni, right?
Yeah, correct. So it is a nationwide recognized certificate, and you can use it to apply to pretty much any uni in any state in Australia.
So, Kevin, we know that you came to Australia to study high school. So, what year did you come, and do you want to share with us your experience and how you found it coming to Australia to study high school?
Yeah, for sure. So I came to Australia when I was about 15 years old, and I started with year 10 in Australia. So before I came to Australia, I was finishing term one in year 10 in Vietnam, my hometown. So when I came to Australia, I kind of restarted year 10 again from term one in Australia. And that is the last year of the secondary education in Australia. And then after I finished year 10, I progressed towards the senior secondary education, which is year 11 and then year 12. And then after year 12, I study and did the HSC, which is a higher school certificate here in New South Wales. With the result of my year 12 study and also my higher school certificate exam, I managed to get like an what I call an ATAR ranking, which is a ranking system based on your HSC mark, and they use that ATAR ranking like kind of select students, as in to qualify students towards the courses they apply for in universities.
Yes, I remember reading, like, say, the minimum qualifications to get into like a certain course. They'll say minimum ATAR of whatever, like it's like 90 or something, right? Is it out of 100?
I believe it's out 99.95. um,
Mm. Very accurate.
oh, yeah, yeah. I don't quote me on that for now, but I'm pretty sure it's 99.95. You cannot get a perfect 100, but if you get 99.95, you are a freak. So, some a little bit more about the HSC assessment. It's a school-based assessment, right? I mean, throughout your HSC, as in throughout your year 12, you will complete school-based assessment, which is like exams you do in school, which together contribute to 50% of your final HSC mark for the course, right? So your year 12 mark, your year 12 academic performance is actually very important because it is half of the HSC mark you're going to receive. And then the other half will come from the HSC exam at the end of year 12, where you sit is a that one is a statewide exam. So in some case you may sit in your school to do the exam, and in some case you will sit in other schools to do the exam. Depends on the locations allocated, but that will make up the other 50%. So together they make up a full HSC mark for you, and then the state will use that HSC mark of every year 12 student in that year to produce a ranking system called ATAR to let you know like what is your rank and how well you perform. And then you use that ATAR ranking to apply into universities. How about in the opposite side? Let's share your experience. Trang, in your case, I think you completed high school in your hometown in Vietnam and then come to Australia for university.
Yeah, so my experience was that I completed my high school in Vietnam, and then after that, I made applications to come to Australia to attend universities here in Australia. Personally, it does feel like I had less time to settle in with my life before uni started here. So the uni year here starts in around late February. So I came to Australia, I think, at the beginning of February. So I only had like a couple of weeks to settle in and find my way around before starting my studies. I guess you could come earlier if you wanted to, like, say, a few weeks earlier, but like, what would you do during that time, you know?
Mm,
Like, if you come like 2 months earlier, would you just chill around in your
mm,
apartment and then go find part-time job?
yeah,
Yeah, so you would want to spend more time at home. So
yeah.
yeah, so when I came like 2 or 3 weeks earlier, it didn't give me a head start like you did. Like, you already know what the country, what the city you're gonna be living in is like, and you sort of know what the country is like. Okay, I know Wollongong, I know Sydney, so I can imagine what it would be like to study in Sydney. But when I was in Vietnam, it's very hard to imagine
Mm,
that. Like, I've never been to Australia, I've never been to Wollongong, I've never been to Sydney, so it's very hard to imagine what would your life be like studying there and possibly living there. So when I came to Australia, I felt like there was a lot to learn all at once. So in terms of like the basics, like transport, how do I get around? How do I get the bus? Is it free? Or how do I get the Opal card? Or how do I can I pay with coins? Or like just the general way of life, like say in Wollongong, it's very quiet in the city after 6 p.m., 7 p.m. So, and I felt like there was some sort of risk because I completed high school in Vietnam. And then after that, I applied to the universities in Australia. So there's that risk. Okay, what if I don't get into some unis? Or what if I really wanted to get into that uni, but I
mm,
don't get it? Or what if I don't get into any uni at all? Then where do I go? What do
mm,
I do next?
mm.
So I guess there's that uncertainty as well that you probably would have less of if you were already in Australia.
Yeah, yeah, true. Because my brother's about to finish year 12, and he's very unclear on what like uni or what courses to pick, and I have to help him out.
Mm,
Whereas I recall back to the time when I was in year 12 here, just before, because
mm,
high school in here they have a lot of career advisor. or like
Yep.
university, academic path advisors. So they,
Mm,
before I finish high school in year 12, halfway through year 12, I already know like I wouldn't do some sort of engineering in uni. And,
mm,
by the end of year 12, I have like six uni with six different courses to apply for. So I got very clear on that. So I think that's the benefit of being here in high school.
mm. Yep. But I guess on the other hand was that I felt like I didn't disrupt my high school education. Like I
Yeah.
just continued on year after year at the same
Mm,
school in the same environment. So I guess there's no disruption in getting used to new
mm,
things, adapting to new things.
yeah.
And of course, the big thing is that I was with my family
Yeah.
until after year 12. So it's really good to just, yeah, be home with the family. And then I have my parents to fall back on if I had any issues. So I think that's, yeah, that, for me, that was really important growing up. So,
Yeah, definitely. It's funny because when I just came in year 10, I felt like kind of like freedom, I was like, oh, I'm free now, no parents, no restriction. I can do whatever I want. That only lasted probably 6 months or something. And then you start to really miss your family. By year 11, year 12, I
mm, mm,
really, really missed my family. And there was time when you're really sick and you still have to go to part-time work, and you still have to do your laundry
mm,
and all that sort of stuff. Right, you still have to cook, you still have to get up and go to study. So you don't really, you only have yourself to fall back on. And that's when I really realized the important value of family, and really miss them.
mm. Yeah, it's only when you're sick, when you're away from home, that you
Yeah.
really feel it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess we talked about our two experiences. One was coming to Australia in year 10, and me was coming to Australia after year 12. I think some parents do ask the question as to can they send their kids to Australia even earlier than year 10, like year 8, year 9. I think that's another option for people to consider. So how about let's summarize, I guess, the main points that people should consider before making this decision as to when to send their children to
Hmm.
Australia?
Yes. So the start early part, I would say it is a good foundation for students if they get to start earlier, as in year 8, year 9, or even year 7, because a lot of families send their kids to start in year 7 because that's the first year in high school, right? So year 1 to year 6, you're in primary school. And then in Australia, when you start year 7, you will change to a new school. And from year 7 to year 12, you stay at one school. That's called high school in Australia. So it's a good foundation to start earlier. You have more time to practice English before uni, like I said, and more time to embrace the Australia culture and lifestyle. The next aspect is finance. As a finance specialist yourself, what do you think about this option, Jack?
Yeah, I think finance is definitely a very, very big factor to consider because, yeah, the earlier you come to Australia, the earlier your family has to provide for you to uh, pay for all the living expenses and the tuition fees. And I think the general rule, well, the general consensus is that living cost in Australia is quite high and tuition fees are quite high too compared to, say, if you're in your hometown. So I guess the earlier you come, the more your family will spend. So I think the financial situation of the family is a very, very big factor to consider. It's very important. You don't want to send your children to Australia too early, and then by the time they get to year 11, year 12, and then something maybe unexpected could happen, or there's a financial crisis or something
Mm.
like that where costs go up. So it might not be very sustainable. So, yeah, definitely a big factor to consider.
Yeah, exactly. Besides, like we mentioned about cost of living, right? One thing that worth noting is if you come that early, you more than likely will be under 18 years old. And by law, you have to stay with a guardian. If you don't have any close relative in Australia, then you have to stay with what they call a host family or homestay. And that homestay will be your legal guardian. And generally, in most cases, the fees you pay for this organization homestay will be more expensive than if you renting privately.
Yeah. Yeah, as we mentioned in our accommodation episode. So refer to that episode if you want to listen more about
Yes,
homestay and other options for over 18s.
yes, definitely. Listen to more of our episodes for more details. um, and I guess the last thing to consider is about, are you self motivated and self disciplined enough to be on your own in a foreign country at such a young age, right? Because you have to be honest with yourself. You have to ask yourself that question. And maybe your parents, the parents, if you're listening to this episode, you probably have to ask your kids that, you know, if are my kids having these traits, are they self motivated, self disciplined, and you know, are they mentally ready to be that independent at such a young age?
Yeah, because if you're at home, then your parents might push you, okay, time to do your homework, stop playing computer games. But if you're living in a homestay, there's only so much they can do. And
Mm,
it's not like they're gonna like check on you at 10 p.m. and be
mm,
like, what are you doing?
yeah.
Have you finished your
Mm,
homework yet? So you'll have to take the matters into your own hands
mm.
if you do come here early.
Exactly. Yeah. Take my experience. They will not check with you. They never ask you to study. They don't say, you know, hey, come on, go
Mm.
study.
Okay, well, I think that wraps up our episode. We hope that was useful for you to guide you into answering this question. There's no straightforward answer. There's a lot of things to consider, and obviously needs consultation between the parents and the children too. Yeah, so hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you haven't already followed us on Instagram or Facebook, please do at the Koala Club Podcast. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple, please do leave us a rating or review. Thank you, Kevin, for joining us for another episode.
No worries. Thanks, Chang. Yeah, it's definitely good to talk about this one. So hope you guys enjoy it and stay tuned for future episodes.
Thanks, guys.